Resolute. Stories of becoming, building, and balancing entrepreneurship from people closer to your climb. David Blinov, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a nice crisp morning, so woke me up a little bit on the way here.
What's your biggest win of the week?
The biggest win of the week is getting to the end of the week. You know, sometimes you have one of those weeks where you have like international client travel, you have a lot of work, and today I still have a big pitch coming up. But I got to say that this is one of the more exciting moments of my week. I've been looking forward to this entire week. So
I'm honored. Let's go all the way to the beginning. You're originally from Latvia.
Yeah.
And you said you came from quite humble origins and beginnings. What was it like growing up?
I mean, that's one way to put it. I don't know how much you know about Latvia in the 90s, but it was a really poor place, right? After the USSR collapsed, people didn't have a lot. And I come from a really poor family, up to a point where quite often I would go to bed hungry because we simply couldn't afford food. And I remember, being 5 or 6 years old, and we did have a TV, so I had access to, Western movies and TV shows. And I realized that it is possible to live differently. I realized that there are countries and places out there where people do have jobs and opportunities, and they live in nice homes, and they can even afford to buy food for their kids. And I remember going to the kitchen when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and my mom was there, and I was like, Mom, one day when I grow up, I'm going to move to one of those countries. I'm going to find a job. I will be successful, and I will support you. So that's the beginning. That's where it all started.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in kindergarten, you had two kind of dream professions. What were they?
I wanted to be a politician or an entrepreneur. And it was so weird. It's one of those usual questions that adults ask from kids. Who do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone says, I want to be a policeman, or I want to be a vet or a doctor. And I would say, I want to be in politics. And people were like, are you crazy? And I don't know. I spent so much time kind of watching TV as a kid, watching Western news and looking at those politicians traveling the world and kind of helping maybe underprivileged communities in some senses. And I felt like I would want to do that when I grow up. Didn't happen, not yet, but I ended up doing the second thing, ended up being an entrepreneur.
Was the TV kind of the source for your entrepreneurial exposure as a kid, or did you have an example somewhere in your life?
I didn't have an example, or maybe that's not fair to say. I think my dad had tried to kind of hustle here and there. It was a period with no jobs. There was no economic stability to speak of. And my dad was trying to come up with side gigs or projects here and there. He never really succeeded at that, but perhaps that did give me some motivation to start looking in that direction. But I think I would say it was the media, that made me realize that it is possible to build companies, and then you're in control of your life and your destiny in many ways.
We go back to the power of content.
Exactly.
You were 16 when you started your first business, and there's a story that a single magazine changed the trajectory of your life. What happened?
Yeah, look, I had to start working very early because my mom got sick, and I got my first job when I was 13, 14 years old. And a lot of my friends were doing the typical teenager stuff. They would go to the movies, they would hang out, and I couldn't even afford to buy a movie ticket. So I had to start working early on. And when I was 16, I was down to my 10 euros, that's all that I had left in my bank account. And I was in a supermarket buying snacks to hang out with my friends, the candy and chips and Coke. And then there was a magazine stand. And back in the day, we had those computer magazines, right? And there was a promo code on the cover of the magazine that said that if you buy this now, you get 3 months of web hosting in a free domain.
Wow.
And that was exactly 10 euros. And I was standing at a cash register thinking, okay, so I can buy these snacks now, and that's all the money I have left in this world. Or I can maybe take a shot at learning something new, and I would have 3 months to learn how to build websites and maybe some basics of digital marketing. And then at least if I fail, I can say that I've tried. So I chose the other thing, and that's where it started. So I was 16 years old. I was in high school when I started my first company, my first project. And it was pretty fun. I remember hiring two of my best friends, my classmates.
Okay.
And I paid them in an envelope. I paid them cash, of course, in an envelope. Every Tuesday before the English class, I would pass them a little envelope under the table, and I felt on top of the world. I felt like I knew everything there is to know about business and marketing in general. We were making big money, what felt like at the time. Obviously, I had no idea what I was doing.
So what exactly were you doing?
No idea. So we started an affiliate marketing company, and it was a website, initially one, and then we added more to the mix, where we would promote online tools and online software for commission, right? And I had to teach myself the basics of HTML and CSS and Photoshop and how online advertising works, how scripts work, and how cookies work. And it was this exciting, amazing new world, and back in the day, we didn't have AI tools and automation. You had to actually build everything and code everything yourself. So in those 3 months, I managed to build that website and get the first customers to continue paying for the hosting and the domain. And like I said, obviously didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know that you're supposed to pay taxes, for example. That was a lesson that I learned later in life. But it was a good start.
What's your advice for young teens looking to start a business? I mean, we see more and more of these business ideas and concepts over social media, and you might even come across it on a magazine like you did. What would you say?
Just do it. I mean, looking at what's possible today, the tools we have, the information and knowledge we have, I had to buy a physical book from a physical shop to start learning HTML because there was nothing online back in the day. These days, you can build websites and landing pages in 30 seconds, drag and drop. It costs almost nothing. All of the information you would ever need is on the internet. It's on TikTok. It's on social media. The other day, we hired a person who was born in early 2000s. I don't know how it's even legal to
I feel so old.
To work at that. I know, but she had learned Excel from TikTok. Wow. I'm like, how do you? So somehow that's possible, and AI, right? So you can learn anything you want from ChatGPT and the other tools. You just ask them the questions, they give you the answers. So if I was 16 right now, I would do exactly the same thing, but 10 times faster and more efficiently. And you have these teenagers these days who are making millions from organic social content. And once again, all you need is a phone and some motivation to start doing things. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. And if you're a young person watching this, maybe this is your sign to go ahead and try.
This is the cue.
This is the cue.
You also played poker. Is that what made you comfortable with risk?
Look, poker was one of the things that one of my experiments, let's say, that I needed to find a way to make money. And I had to, like I said, start supporting my mom quite early. And sometimes my money would come from my projects and little startups that I was working on. Sometimes they would not work out and I would lose everything, and then I would have to rely on something else. And I got introduced to poker when I was underage as well. I was 16 or 17 at the time. And I realized that it's not only fun, but you can actually make money doing it. Or lose money, but that's a different. Let's not talk about that. You can actually make money doing it. And for the first couple of years when I was underage, I used a fake ID to play. I'm not saying you should do it, but I'm saying that it was possible back in the day. And when I turned 18, I started traveling around Europe a little bit, playing cards and trying to make enough money to support my mom, who couldn't work at the time anymore. And I think I wouldn't say that it made me more comfortable with risk because it is frustrating to lose money when you don't have a lot of money. But it made me more comfortable with probabilities and math. And I feel like I had never been a big fan of math before. It was my least favorite subject at school. But poker makes you think about probabilities and risk and money in a very calculated way. It makes you more comfortable with quickly assessing what's a good bet to make and what is not, based on what is the potential return on investment. And I think that is a skill that has traveled with me throughout these years. When I think about a new initiative, a new project, a new idea, what I think about is how much do I need to bet versus the potential return on investment, and is it worth it? And if it's not, I don't do it. So I think that's one of the main lessons that I learned from that.
Yeah, you actually get more autonomy and control over the situation you're in. You traveled quite a few times to Finland. What motivated you to move here in the first place?
I traveled to Finland for the first time when I was 16 or 17. I fell in love with the place. There was a huge contrast between Finland and where I came from in terms of the way people are, but then all the way to obviously the economics and the fact that people had just way more opportunities here. Back in the day, I was still kind of playing with the idea of studying politics, and I was supposed to move to England. So I got accepted to a uni there. But then I ended up coming here. I can't explain how that happened. It was just a feeling. I felt like I can really relate to this place. I can relate to the people. I can relate to the mentality. And that this would be a place I can try building my life in.
I love that. It's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
But you ended up in London.
I ended up in the UK, actually. Yeah, I wish it was London. I wish it was London. It wasn't London. It was Plymouth.
Okay.
And if you've never been there, don't go. It's not great. but it was when I was already studying in Finland. I got a job. I got a job offer in the UK, and I got a call from a company based in Plymouth that was at the time the largest casino consultancy in the world potentially. And I had a background in poker and marketing, and I spoke a bunch of languages. So they offered me the job, and they said, look, if you want this job, you have to be here on a Monday morning. And it was a Friday night. I was having a beer with my friends. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I have my whole life here. I'm studying here. I have my apartment. And they're like, well, it's just what it is. Like, if you want to do this, you'll be here on Monday at 9 a.m. And at the time, I didn't even know where Plymouth was. And I was there on Monday at 9 a.m. And it ended up being a very interesting experience. I spent almost 2 years traveling the world, organizing some of the largest poker tournaments in the world, which was an exciting thing to do for a 20-year-old. And I got to sharpen my marketing skills, but then I also got to meet a lot of people and interact with them face to face. And I think that was a very cool experience. But I ended up waking up every single morning wishing I was back in Finland.
Okay.
Which is, I know, right?
I'm gobsmacked because I've never had that feeling.
You're traveling the world and you're seeing all these exciting places and meeting all these cool people. And every day I feel like I want to be back in Finland. And then I just, one day I got up and I left the job and I moved back here. And I've been here ever since. That's
that's how we're back here in Helsinki.
That's how we're back in Helsinki, and it has been a good decision. Now I'm Finnish officially. I speak the language. I'm a citizen. I ended up starting a bunch of companies here, and I have my life, my family, my friends, and I love it here. That's not to say that there is no areas for improvement. I think we could definitely be giving more support to entrepreneurs, for example. But all in all, compared to many other places, this is an amazing place.
It's the place for you right now.
It's the place for me right now.
You studied here and then you went to work as a marketing professional for a Finnish company. Yeah. But what happened there?
Look, I did feel like I kind of owe it to myself after getting a degree here to try and explore the job market, pay back the taxes that were spent on my education. And I got my first jobs here, and it was a really cool experience to kind of get to know the culture and dive deeper into digital marketing. But at one point, I realized that, look, I have quite a lot of experience to share, because at the same time as I was having these full-time jobs, I was always running side projects, right? I would always have a little consulting gig, or I was doing public speaking, or maybe I would have an e-commerce shop selling watches. I used to be really into watches. And I've accumulated more experience than you could reasonably be expected to have at 25 or 26, just because I always had kind of two jobs at a time. And at some point, I just felt like, look, I probably would be able to share this experience with someone else. And I distinctly remember when I was 26 or 27, I went for a job interview with a large B2B company in Helsinki. And they were looking for a marketing manager. And during the interview, I got to ask them questions about their marketing setup. How are you doing things? What technology are you using? What KPIs are you measuring? And I was shocked at how far behind they are compared to what's possible today. they were using spreadsheets instead of CRMs and marketing automation. They were not measuring anything properly. Nothing was automated. They were just beginning to think about using paid advertising and paid social in their marketing. Whereas in the job that I had at the time, I was relying massively on that to drive leads and qualified pipeline for our customers. And I was like, look, if this is what it is, maybe this is not the kind of career that I want for myself. Perhaps I could start a company where I would share my experience with them, help them develop, add value to these businesses, and at the same time, build a company for myself. And as I was thinking that, I realized that, hey, I actually have a domain name that I had registered. It all comes down to domain names in my life for some reason. Maybe I should just buy like 50 of them. I had a domain name registered from way back when. And I was like, I don't even need to do anything. I can just take that domain and rebrand it as a marketing agency and start offering services. And that's where the F company has its roots from. It was one of my many businesses and many startups that I started in Finland, but the one that perhaps succeeded the most.
You didn't start it yourself though, right?
I didn't start it myself. I had two partners in the beginning. Obviously, the idea came from me, kind of the drive and the motivation came from me. I still remember when I came up with that idea. That same night, I invited them for a beer, and I was like, "Hey guys, we've done all of this stuff before. We had multiple startups before together, and some of them we raised money, we built products, we then failed, and the companies went bankrupt. But we had all of this experience, and I said, how about we start sharing it? And I managed to excite the guys enough that night for them to join me on one of my crazy ideas. And it definitely was good to start this one with two of my closest friends, especially in the beginning when the times were tough. Having this support around you at all times is something that really helps you get through the day.
This was 8 years ago. What were some of the concrete steps you guys took to start the book of business for you?
You just got to hustle a lot in the beginning. That's what it is. Like, I moved to Finland with no money, no language, no language skills, no connections. And I realized very early on that I'm at a massive disadvantage compared to my classmates at the business school. You know, people who grew up here, they were native speakers, they knew a lot of people. They, in most cases, came from middle-class families, you know. And I think the biggest difference between us was the fact that they always had backup. If they failed, there would always be someone to pick them up, you know, whether it's the social security system that we have or their families and friends. And I never had that, you know. Not only was it me, it was also my mom that was relying on me financially, and I had to pay for her medication and her living. So I knew that I can't fail. When I was just 19, I had no choice but to hustle since I was a little boy. And that same attitude was transferred to every single startup that I've had. And it was the same attitude that we had at the beginning of the F company, where we had to do crazy things to get our first customers. Our second customer ever was a tiny website development project. In fact, the entire project was so small that now we wouldn't even look at it as a potentially kind of money-making exercise. But back in the day, that was all we had, and we had to start somewhere. And the CEO of that company, it was a recruitment company. He had a very interesting way of choosing partners and agencies to work with. He threw a big party. And he invited 3 agencies to participate in that party. And then that was his way of getting to know the people who work there. And I started kind of mingling with his employees at the party and trying to really figure out how will he actually make the decision. Like, is it who drinks the most? Like, how are we doing this? And then they said, look, he's just going to pick whoever he likes the most. Yeah. So the best thing you can do is to make friends with the guy during the night. And then we all ended up in a bar, obviously, after the office party, and there's maybe 30 or 40 people there. And then I went and I bought a drink to one of the senior employees, and I was like, look, what is your boss like? And she said he loves cigars. And I'm like, God damn it, I don't smoke. Like I hate the taste of it. I hate the smell of it. But you got to do what you got to do. And I went and I started kind of hustling around the bar, asking random people, look, guys, do you have a cigar by any chance? And then like the 15th person I asked, he was like, well, actually, I do. And I had a little bit of cash, so I paid him cash for 2 cigars. And then I went to the terrace. It was summertime. I found the CEO there. And I was like, just casually mentioning, look, I really feel like a cigar now. And it's like, wow, really? You love cigars? I'm like, yeah, man, that's my favorite thing in the world. Do you want one? He's like, yeah. And then it's 4 a.m. We're standing on this terrace. I'm trying not to choke on the cigar smoke and pretending that I love it, just to build a relationship with this guy. And the next morning, he called us and said that we won the project. And I'm not saying that's what you should do.
Yeah.
But that's what you should do sometimes.
Sometimes that's what it requires.
Sometimes that's what's needed. And we do have a lot of stories like that. You know, our first customers we were getting through friends and family and hustling and meeting random people at events. But as you build up your portfolio and as you do an amazing job, you start getting those cases that you can talk about.
Yeah.
And you can advertise. And those few projects we put in hundreds or sometimes thousands of hours in just to make sure that we have amazing references and case studies to speak of later on. And that's what helped us build up that book of business as a, snowball in many ways.
I love it. Young service businesses often struggle with scaling because revenue is so tied to time allocated. How did you get through that and figure out a way to make those 24 hours work for you?
We just worked our asses off. Like that's what it was in the beginning. We didn't think so much about profitability and fair use of our time as perhaps building our network and getting good cases out of it. And it's definitely not something I would do today. When I have the connections, when I've built a personal brand, I wouldn't be selling my time so cheap. But when we got our first enterprise customers, I still remember it was an enterprise customer. It was Vattenfall, the Swedish state-owned energy company. And they were so big that the first sales meeting that we had, they brought in twice as many people as we had working in our entire company. And I remember we had met with our partners, business partners before the meeting, and we're like, hey guys, should we just quickly call friends and family to come and sit with us in this meeting just to make them feel like we're not too small? And we got this first customer. It was such a huge breakthrough for us that it didn't matter how much they're paying us. It was just the fact that we could say that we're working with Vattenfall, that's what mattered. And our first office was actually 50 meters away from here, where your studio is. And I remember coming into that office on Saturdays and Sundays and evenings and early mornings to work on that project. I had a marker, I had a whiteboard, and I was trying to figure out the best way to serve them without billing them anything for it. I just wanted for them to be so happy that I would be able to use them as a reference. And of course, at some point we realized that maybe it's not the most scalable way to do things. We had to start thinking about profitability and time and stuff like that. And that's when we changed our pricing model. But in the beginning, you just have to hustle. And that's what we did. So
what did you change your pricing model to?
Look, we've evolved our pricing model many times over the years. But the thing that made the most impact is when we started putting a price tag on the hours that we spend instead of the value, which is very interesting because we've made a full circle. In the beginning, we were selling value and not time. Then for the next couple of years, we moved to the hourly pricing model, which was much more fair because if you put in 100 hours, you get paid for 100 hours. It's easier to buy. And now we went back to the value model because we add so much value that if you bill hourly, that doesn't represent fully what you're doing. If you're helping a 10 billion euro company change their entire digital marketing strategy and you spend 100 hours on it, which costs you 15,000 euros, but the value that you've added is way more than that, then perhaps it's not a fair way to bill. So we've made full circle with that.
Interesting. Yeah. You focus solely on B2B clients. Why should entrepreneurs narrow down on a niche and focus on just one type of business?
Look, if I were to talk about my key lessons, the number one lesson perhaps is to find your niche as soon as possible. And when we started the company, we did a little bit of everything. You know, we smoked cigars with company CEOs so that we can build a website for them. But then you soon realize that by doing that, you're competing with absolutely everyone else. And the marketing agency world is very competitive. You know, from huge agencies to one-man shows, there's literally thousands of them in Finland alone, in a small country like Finland. And I've always had this strong feeling inside me that I would rather be the best in a narrow niche as opposed to competing with everyone else and trying to be good at everything, at absolutely everything. And I remember getting my business partners together kind of 2 years in and making a case for focusing on B2B. I was like, look, guys, we're really good at this. We have really happy customers and there is no competition. And at first it was really hard to make that decision, especially for them. They felt like we would be saying no to a lot of potential customers, which is true.
Yeah.
But that opened up the door to a lot of new opportunities that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And purely the fact that you're able to focus your competences, your story, your messaging on something very narrow gives you a massive edge in a competitive environment where you're coming in to pitch for a project and there is 5 agencies that say they do everything.
Yeah.
You know, B2C, D2C, e-commerce, B2B. And we come in and we say, look, this is the only thing we do. And we're the best at this thing. And here are the cases. And we understand the pain points that you're facing in your B2B company so intimately that we noticed their eyes light up when we had those conversations together because they knew that we understand their pain points.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would happened twice. People started crying in meetings with us, which felt like therapy sessions because they would come to us and start complaining about all the issues they're facing in their marketing team and how they're not getting the support they need from their managements. And we say, yeah, we understand. We've worked with multiple clients like this, and this is what we've done, and this is how we help them. And it's okay to feel like you're feeling now. And then people started crying, you know, because they felt like they finally found someone who gets them. So focus and finding your niche is one of the best things you can do for your business. You know?
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful story because so often we're in the situation where people are just trying to push their product or service at you and completely ignoring the fact that you just want to be understood.
Exactly. 100%.
You had to switch gears from client work to leadership as the company grew. What was that like?
And that was hard. It still is hard. But that was one of the transformational moments, I think, for a business where my board of advisors scheduled a one-on-one call with me. And they're like, David, we need to talk. You're spending all of your time and energy working in the business instead of working on the business. And the most realistic thing you can get out of it is a burnout, right? And if we want to scale this thing, you need to zoom out. You need to trust people to do their job. You need to focus on big picture strategy. You need to become more of the face of the company. And it was really hard for me because when you start a company and you define the standards for how things should be done and how the client work should be executed, and then you realize that when you hire people, from one reason or the other, they don't have the same standards. Obviously, it's not their business. It's not their company. They're not going to come in on a Saturday. You can't expect for them to put in 100 extra hours in something. It was really hard for me to let go. And the thing that did help me was realizing that it's not me who's the ultimate judge of the quality of the work that we do. It's the client. And it doesn't need to be 10 out of 10 according to David, right? It could be 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, but as long as the client is really happy and they feel like we're adding a lot of value, then perhaps that's what matters. And that was the point where I was able to empower my people to do their best work without me coming in and checking on every single thing. And that enabled me to zoom out and spend my time where it really matters. And for me, it was about ironing out our positioning, our story, but especially becoming more of the face of the company And the F Company in many ways has been a founder-led brand where we focused on channels like LinkedIn. We focused massively on our personal brands to drive business for the company, and would not have been possible without learning to let go of the day-to-day operations in the business.
What else did you unlearn as a leader in the business?
I think those were some of the biggest lessons, that you really need to trust your team. You need to enable them to do their best job. I think I learned to micromanage. That was something that was really tough on my first.
Are you
employees.
a perfectionist?
I am a perfectionist, but I think it's also one of those things that I had to unlearn.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is a point of being good enough, you know, and especially in marketing, so many things get ruined or delayed by this quest for perfection. You know, we're spending hundreds of hours sitting in meetings, debating every single word in a press release or a website. We're thinking about getting 100% complete data instead of maybe 85 or 90%. And something that I had to unlearn was how to stop chasing that perfection and start delivering faster. Because at the end of the day, everything else being equal, the fastest company in the market will win. That's what I believe in very strongly. And it was pivotal for us to be able to experiment faster, to try new channels and new approaches quicker than the competition. We were one of the first agencies in Finland to be relying on organic LinkedIn, for example, to drive our business. And that ended up driving 6 or 7 million euros over the years, purely from personal brands alone. And we could have spent a year debating, you know, like, should we build a fancy studio to start producing content? Or maybe it's a bad idea to begin with. Instead, we just decided to test it and see what happens, you know, and if in a couple of weeks or months you don't see traction, then you try the next thing. So letting go of this perfectionism was definitely one of the key lessons.
I'm so excited to sit here with another marketing strategist and someone who shares my passion for marketing. So I'm going to take the creative freedom to kind of dive in a little bit into the tips in that space, as it's quite natural for you too. What are some of the biggest misconceptions entrepreneurs have about marketing?
Biggest misconceptions, Jesus. There's probably a book written about it.
Let's do top 2 or 3.
There is a lot. Maybe the biggest one is that marketing needs to be complicated and difficult. And I think that myth is also driven by vendors and agencies, you know, software vendors especially. If you're talking about account-based marketing, for example, everyone thinks that you need to have 100K worth of software to do it. And of course, that is driven by the people who sell that software. If you open LinkedIn right now, you're going to see 25 posts from marketing agencies telling you that if you're not doing X, Y, or Z, then you're just absolutely going to lose, right? And the bottom line is that marketing doesn't have to be complicated. Marketing is actually quite simple. At the end of the day, it's not about tools. It's not about apps. It's about understanding who you're selling to and how people buy. And the way that people buy hasn't changed in hundreds of years and will probably never change, because it all comes down to basic behavioral psychology, you know, the basic principles. And the best marketers are the ones who are able to zoom out from the numbers on their screen and look past their screen, look who's behind that screen. And it's just a person out there, right, who has their fears and dreams and needs and wants. And if you're able to address them, then you're going to be successful. And of course, you're going to need technology to speed that up and to enable that and do it in a better way. But at the end of the day, it's all comes down to basic psychology. And for that reason, a company like ours was able to grow and be successful without money, right? We were completely self-funded. We bootstrapped the hell out of it. We never got a single cent from anyone else. We didn't have marketing budgets, but we understood what our audience needs, what their daily pain points are, and where to find them. And then we focused all of our time and attention on that. The second thing perhaps is focus, kind of leading out of the first thing I said. it's really common and maybe even natural for marketers to feel FOMO. You know, you open social media and there is 1,000 things that you should be doing.
Yeah.
You should be focusing on SEO and search and learning AI, and you need to be amazing at PPC, and you need to have a podcast, and you need to be making videos. And then your boss comes to you with 1 million random requests a day, and then you're spreading yourself thin. And marketers feel like they have to be present everywhere and do everything. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But I would much rather you focus on one channel and be spectacular there, deliver exceptional value to your audience, as opposed to spreading yourself thin and doing mediocre work, you know, producing one podcast episode per year on Spotify just because you have 1 million other things to do. Especially this day and age when there's so much information coming at you, I think focus is becoming more and more important. And marketers really need to slow down, zoom out, and understand that it's not so complicated.
We know the buyer process is not linear, and a lot of the buying decisions happen in places we can't track. You call this the dark funnel.
Yeah.
So how exactly do we know which marketing activities are so-called worth it?
Look, I think it's a little bit different between B2B and B2C. Those of you who are working in B2C or e-commerce, in many ways, you're lucky enough to be able to track more.
Yeah.
You have more data that's actionable. You can tell that if you invest €1,000 in something, it's going to deliver 2.5 times X ROI. B2B is different. And the longer the sales cycles are, the harder it is to measure the impact of what you do. And it all comes down to the fact that most of the touch points are not measurable, just like you said. Because if you think about how you make buying decisions in a company, let's say you need to buy a piece of software that costs a significant amount of money, you're not going to just wake up in the morning, Google something, press on the first link, and then pay them €10,000 a year. That's not how it works. Perhaps the buying process looks a little bit different. Perhaps it starts way earlier and involves way more touch points. In fact, on average, a typical customer journey is 10 months long, 10 months. And it involves 11 different people normally, some of whom are decision makers, some of whom hold the budgets, some of whom are the end users, and some of whom are just somehow randomly involved in the process, usually legal and procurement, my favorite people in the world. And all of them have a say. All of them have touch points with your brand, your product, your website. All of them talk to their peers. If you're looking for marketing automation, you're going to go to other marketers. You're going to ask them, look, what do you guys use? What is your experience with HubSpot or ActiveCampaign or Salesforce Pardot? And they will tell you what they like and they don't like. And none of these touch points are trackable. None of them. And the fact that someone clicks on a link and then ends up making this huge purchase doesn't mean that this click in Google search is the one that actually drove the deal, because you're unable to see the previous 800 touch points. And on average, there are 800 touch points in complex B2B deals. So then what you should be doing is two things. First of all, you need to be okay with uncertainty, right? You need to realize that you can't be making marketing decisions just based on the data you can track in your Google Analytics dashboard. Those days are gone because of GDPR, because of cookies going away. That's the first thing. The next thing you need to do is you need to build your own mix of short-term, mid-term, and long-term metrics that will allow you to understand the impact you're making on revenue, even when the sales cycles are very long. So in the short term, we're looking at things like content engagement among the key accounts or key people you're trying to reach. And if you can prove with data that the right companies are watching your case studies, visiting the right pages on your website, coming to your webinars and events, perhaps you're doing something right. On its own, that data is not enough. That's why you need to add something to it. So in the midterm, we're looking at pipeline development. So are we getting qualified leads? Is the speed at which they're moving through the pipeline, through the CRM, getting faster? Because that's a good sign. We're looking at what happens to your brand, because if you're succeeding at building brand awareness and demand, people are going to start searching for you more and more. And then finally, in the longer run, we're looking at revenue, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. It's not clicks or leads or views, it's the money that the company is getting in. So then by putting those metrics together, we're able to paint a more accurate picture. Even in cases when we can't directly attribute marketing actions to revenue that comes in half a year later, if we can say that throughout this journey, we've created X amount of touch points, we've increased the speed at which this company moved through the process. When we asked them how they found us, they told us that they've been consuming our content on socials and they've been visiting our events. And then half a year later, they ended up buying. Perhaps marketing did influence that deal in a very major way. So what we help companies do, what we help marketers do, is to prove that they're making an impact on revenue. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do.
No, it's a major task, and you're kind of set to, not to fail, but there's a lot of speed bumps when you're a marketer in a bigger
100%.
firm. You often talk about saying goodbye to gated content. I'm so with you on that. Why should we give more autonomy and flexibility to target audiences?
Look, if you imagine a very long and complex customer journey, and you think about the tasks that your audience has to do in order to make a decision, we call them jobs to be done. If you're choosing, going back to the example, if you're choosing marketing automation software, you're most likely considering 4 or 5 different options. It's a pretty big decision, and you're risking your career in many ways to recommend one piece of software over the other. For you personally, there is very little to gain, but there is a lot to lose. If you recommend that your company goes with software that doesn't work and doesn't meet your needs, then perhaps you're risking at least your reputation and maybe even your job security. So what this means in practice is that people do a lot of research. They consume a lot of content. They compare different products. They read reviews. They look at the technical specifications and pricing. And if you think about it logically, would you rather make it easier for them to research you and make an informed decision, or would you rather make it harder? And when you explain it to people and to companies in this way, and when you show them what the B2B buying journey actually looks like in 2025, it creates this aha moment. They realize that perhaps we should ungate the content. Perhaps we should make our most valuable content as easy as possible to consume as opposed to gating it. And most companies would benefit from having 100 people in their ICP consume a piece of content with 0 clicks, either through social platforms directly on the platforms or on the website, as opposed to getting one lead in their CRM that probably is not even a lead because they didn't actually have purchase intent. They simply wanted to consume that content. And when you once again put it in these terms, most companies realize that, it probably makes sense to ungate most of the content. And I feel like in the last couple of years, there's been a huge push among B2B companies, especially, to move away from gated content. And I support that push 100%. Having said that, nothing in marketing is black and white. There absolutely are cases where it does make sense to use gated content. When you have something that's exceptionally valuable, let's say you've put in a lot of time and money producing a piece of research that is just incredible, and you know that the only people who would benefit from it are your ICP in the late stage of their buying process, it might make sense. Just a few days ago, I was having a conversation with a large B2B company where I did advise for them to go for gated content because they're so early in the process that they need to be able to prove to their management team that someone is consuming their content. And for them, the best way to prove it is to show that the entries are coming into the CRM. And we all agreed that this is not a decision that we want to support long term, but in the first 6 months, in the first 12 months, this is something that we have to do. And then we're going to gradually move away from that. So there is always shades of gray in marketing.
I know this is dependent on industry, but is there a realistic marketing spend per revenue percentage that companies should invest in if they're looking at brand and growth marketing?
More than they are now. Especially in Finland. I feel like we're a country of engineers where we build amazing products and then we aggressively wait for the phone to ring and for someone to come to us with money. It doesn't work that way. There is no benchmark for this. There is no set percentage that you should be spending, but it's up to marketers to look at the sales targets that they have, the qualified pipeline targets, and then trace it back to how much it costs to get one of those qualified leads. And then come back to the CFO and the CEO and say, look, this is how much money we realistically need. And for some companies, it could be 1% of their revenue. For some, it can be 5%. It really depends on your acquisition cost. So once again, it all comes down to the math, and it's up to us as B2B marketers and CMOs to speak the language that our CEOs and CFOs speak. If you come to them and say, look, I need more money for brand awareness, you're not going to go very far. If you come to them and say, look, guys, we need to spend X amount of money to be in a top 3 for our potential customers when they are in market, and we need to spend X amount of money to generate this much qualified pipeline, that becomes a proposition that is much harder to refuse. But to answer your question, the percentage really depends.
Instead of filling annual marketing calendars with different campaigns, you advocate for growth marketing and demand generation. Can you explain that like you were explaining it to a 12-year-old? What does growth marketing mean?
I mean, growth marketing is a buzzword, so is demand generation. And I feel like us marketers, like we can't go a year without coming up
with the new term.
It used to be growth hacking back in the day.
Yep.
And I remember a CEO of a stock listed company in Helsinki called me to ask how much it would cost to get 10% extra on their in their pipeline. And I gave him a number. And he said, look, can't you just growth hack it? Can't you just do it for like 10% of the cost? And I was like, look, it's not a thing. It's just something that marketers invented to sound cool.
We're very good at that.
Yeah, we are very good at that. Well, look, in some cases it's good. Demand generation at the end of the day is just brand awareness building, right? But it's a cool new word, and it's maybe easier to sell it to the rest of the company. And if that's the case, then whatever. But you were asking about campaigns versus the kind of always on demand generation approach. If you think about how buyers buy, roughly 95% of your addressable market, especially in B2B, is not looking to buy at any given point. Maybe there is no budget, maybe there is no need, maybe they're happy with their current solution. So if you were to go and run a value proposition driven campaign, a product campaign to this audience right now, most of them don't care. So you would be wasting their time and your money. What you should be doing instead is thinking about the pain points that they're facing every single day, right? There could be financial, technical, operational. If you're a marketer, then the things that bother you and concern you every day are probably related to how to get more marketing budget or how to get 20% more pipeline with the same budget as you had last year. That's what they care about day in and day out. So then what you should be doing is addressing their pain points instead of selling your product. And because those pain points persist, they're there 24/7, 365 days a year, you should be thinking about it in terms of always on campaigns, in terms of a stream of content that is constantly in front of the eyes of your audience that addresses their pain points, that creates trust in your expertise. It positions you as the expert in the eyes of those dream customers. And then when the time to buy comes, and it could be tomorrow, it could be a year from now, they want to shortlist you, come to you, and ideally buy from you. And for that reason, I believe that marketing should be thought of as always on. And whether you call it demand generation or growth marketing or awareness building or whatever is the term we'll come up with next year, the fact remains that you should always be top of mind. And you should always be ready to capture that demand when it comes. You should have the kind of campaigns and content that will bring those leads in and help move them through the pipeline. And all of that is constant. It's silly of us to assume that if we're planning a quarterly campaign, then this is the time when people are ready to buy that product. It's just not how this works.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
No.
Your LinkedIn posts brought over 1 million in revenue last year.
Yeah.
What other concrete examples can business owners do to drive this demand or drive that, be on top of mind for their target audience?
Look, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as a founder, and something that I live by in my work life, is work like hell and advertise. And the reason I love this phrase so much is that even though it's simple, it is quite complex because one doesn't work without the other. And we talked about the fact that in Finland, we have a lot of amazing entrepreneurs and business owners who create great products, but then no one knows they exist. So maybe there is not a lot of points in that. And it's something we can learn from other countries and other cultures that are much more extroverted and much more likely to be promoting themselves. So I realized early on that I need to create a founder-led brand. A word like that didn't exist when I started. Now it's a thing. But if you're an entrepreneur, you want to grow a business, you need to be able to put yourself out there. And I believe that one of the best things you can do for yourself and your business is to be visible, is to build a network, is to be producing content, is to be seen as an expert. And it's not something that needs a lot of money. Like we started with no money at all. And organic LinkedIn then became one of our major revenue sources. I think in total, we can attribute about 6 million, not to our brand, but to the brands of our people. My personal profile brought over 1 million euros in net new sales last year. And then we have a few other people in our company who we actively encourage to build their personal brands and create thought leadership. And going back to the founder-led brand concept, I don't think it's something you can live without anymore. We're essential. We're way past the age of this shy, geeky engineer entrepreneur where you build something in your garage and you hope that the world will come to you with cameras and flashlights and film it. That's not how it's going to go. You need to build it and then tell the world you did it. Do a great thing and tell everyone you did it. I think that's the single biggest piece of advice I can give to people starting out today.
I'd almost switch that and say also show while you're building it, because I think that's some of the most powerful content I'm personally consuming at the moment, and I see is really becoming popular in the algorithms. Like you're seeing the journey of like, show me the nitty gritty of what it looks like to build whatever you're doing.
Exactly, because it's relatable. No one cares about this glossy, polished story. We're tired of that. You want to see what it's really like to be building this company. You want to see how difficult it really is to be an entrepreneur. And it's something that we started doing quite early on as well, where we were open about the challenges. We were open about how much or how little money we were making. And I think it's something that a lot of people these days are capitalizing on as well.
Yeah.
So definitely think about how to build a founder brand and how to create this community around you of people who really deeply care about what you do and your mission and your why.
Yeah. Many business owners still do struggle to put themselves in front of that camera or to write that content.
Yeah.
Why is writing so important?
Look, I think there's a lot of different answers for different people. I never do my writing with AI, for example, because to me, writing helps you sharpen your thinking. And I produce a lot of LinkedIn content, and I know that ChatGPT could make that post in 30 seconds. Sometimes I spend 3 hours writing that post, and not because I'm a perfectionist and I want, for the Oxford comma to be in the right place, but because I want to make sure that I really understand this subject.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I really believe in what I'm saying. I want to have a feeling that I'm confident that this is the right way to go. And a lot of the time, by the time I finish writing this post or this article or this blog, I realize that it doesn't make any sense. And there have been kind of paradigm shift moments for me when I realized that the way I had been thinking about marketing was wrong. And it was writing and it was putting my thoughts on paper that made me realize how wrong I was and what the right solution is. And I'm not ashamed to say that I have been wrong many times. I will be wrong many times. I have changed my opinions many times on what is the best way to do marketing. And writing played a pivotal role in that.
I've actually had several moments where I'm writing a LinkedIn or an Instagram post and I realize like, shit, my website copy or like my pitch or whatever it just needs to be tweaked because this makes so much more sense. It's very easy to look at what your competitors are doing. How do we stay innovative and stand out from the crowd?
Yeah. Look, it's easy and it's tempting to look at what the competitors are doing. And many years ago, someone told me to just not do that. I think it was one of our board advisors. By the way, if you're considering getting advisors, do it. It was one of the best things. One of the best things I could have done for my business. But I simply stopped caring about what the competition is doing. It's an incredible source of FOMO to see that a competitor with 10 times the budget and 5 times the people is doing all of these amazing things. They're starting a podcast, they have their own live events, they're doing this and this and that. And then you realize that, damn, I should be doing all of this. And then you start spreading yourself too thin, you lose the impact and you burn out in the worst case. So then what I started focusing on is my audience and how to add the most value to them. And we understood what the pain points are that the B2B marketers are facing. We understood the channels or platforms where they hang out. And then we realized that we can only afford to focus on 1 or 2 of them. And for us, it was events or webinars during COVID and organic LinkedIn. And that's all we did without looking at what the competitors were doing. And there was a period of maybe 2 or 3 years where you asked me, do you know how your top 3 competitors are doing in Finland or even who they are? And I would have told you, no, I don't really know and I don't really care. Because my business is growing, my customers are happy. I don't want to be stressing myself out. That's not to say that competitor research is not important. It is. When you're starting out, when you're launching new products or new services. But once you know that there is the product market fit for whatever you're selling, my advice is not to stress too much about what the competitors are doing.
That's so good. Let's piggyback on to what you said about the board of advisors. Who did you seek out, or what kind of people did you seek out for that board?
Yeah, look, there were a few pivotal moments in the history of the F company in this case when we realized that we don't have the knowledge to get to the point where we want to be. Earlier on, we realized that we don't know enough about the markets. We don't have a network that's wide enough. We don't have access to as many B2B companies that we would like to. So then we asked ourselves, who can we bring on board that would enable all of this for us? And then we found Santtu Kottila in this case, who started the largest marketing community in Finland, Markkinointikollektiivi, and he was a CMO at a tech company at the time. And I took him out for lunch and I said, look, we have a vision of building the best B2B agency in the Nordics, but we have a blocker and we need a person like you. How would you like to join us? A few years down the line, when we realized that we might be interested in exiting the business at some point, but we have no idea about M&A, we have no idea how agencies are being valued, we realized that we need someone who has done this exact thing before. And then once again, I called up a guy called Juho Jokinen, who had built and sold a very successful agency earlier on. And I said, look, we have this thing, it's growing, and we think we have a lot of potential. One day, perhaps would like to exit. And you're the guy who's done this before. How about you come in and be part of this journey? And I'm all up for learning from your mistakes. You absolutely should. But if someone has already been through this journey before, has made these mistakes before, has built a framework for how to navigate these waters, it makes so much sense to bring those people in. We've saved years of time by bringing those 2 individuals in, and we've saved like countless sleepless nights simply by being able to call them up whenever you want to and ask them questions about how they have done this in the past or how they think it should be done. It was invaluable. I think together with choosing a narrow niche to focus on, that was maybe the single best decision that we've made. So if you're an entrepreneur starting out, maybe you're seeing traction, you have product market fit already, absolutely seek out advisors. It's worth whatever equity or money you're going to be paying. It's one of the best things you can do. I
think that's the truth, right? You don't have to go through it alone. No. And I mean, you're going to, like you said, you're going to save years, but also so much money and just headaches of seeking out those people. And there is so much help. I think people are quite willing to help. They're interested, and especially if they're business executives or entrepreneurs who've done it before, like they're actually quite eager to share that knowledge.
And look, the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Maybe they don't have time right now, but maybe they would tell you of someone else in their network who could help you. And just like you said, it's for many people, it's so rewarding to be sharing their experience with someone. I know that because for me it is. I love to mentor people and advise companies as well. And it's just an amazing opportunity for them as well to see how their knowledge and their experience transforms a business. And some of the feedback they've given us when we had closed the deal and we sold the company, when we went for dinner to celebrate, and the feedback they gave me and my business partner was that they were amazed by how quickly and eagerly we actually implemented their advice. We would have a meeting on a Monday morning and they would tell us that we need to shift our strategy and there's a better way to do it. And by the end of the week, it was done, you know? And it was rewarding for them. It was fantastic for us. And I think everyone won in the end. Everyone got the reward.
One of my old bosses in the US, she was the director of a startup incubator, and she said one of the defining factors of success for an entrepreneur is the coachability of them. Yeah. So seek out advice, but also implement it.
Exactly. Be like a sponge. You know, if you're lucky enough to have people around you who have done this before, just get that information put it close to heart. You know? Do it, act on it.
Talk about the factors that led to the decision of the exit. What did the company look like at that point, and how did you go about that decision-making process?
We weren't actively looking to exit. We knew that it's in the cards one day. Could be next year, could be 5 years from now. But our vision from day one had been to build the best B2B agency in the Nordics. I remember like our first kind of offsite before we even signed the shareholders agreement, we all decided that we want to aim big. We want to build something really cool. Otherwise, what's the point? And what we were looking for in an exit is not so much the money that we would make personally, but an opportunity to do bigger and better things at a much larger scale.
Yeah.
And then we decided that if one day this opportunity came, and someone came in to give us the superpowers, then perhaps that's something we would consider. And then over the years, our company started growing. Between 2020 and 2024, we quadrupled our revenue. We went from being a tiny company to being close to 2 million in revenue. Last year, we did 2 million. And we started attracting attention from potential buyers. And in the year or two leading up to the acquisition, we were approached 4 or 5 times by potential parties from Finland and other countries as well. And sometimes it was just 1 or 2 meetings when we quickly realized there is no fit. Sometimes it went much further than that, but we always ended up saying no. Even to offers that from a financial standpoint seemed fantastic. But then when we asked ourselves, what are the superpowers that these guys are bringing? We realized that there aren't any. And for them, it's purely a financial decision. They just want to squeeze out more margin out of us. And then at one point, we were approached by a large independent Swedish agency called Precis. And they came to see us. We flew into Stockholm. We went for beers with the guys, and they were about the same age, a few years older. They all came from Google. They met there in their early 20s as account managers for Google Ads. And then they, just like us, realized that they have quite a bit of experience, and they decided to start an agency. Now, it went a little bit better for them than it did for us. They managed to grow it to like a 50, 60 million euro agency in 10 or 12 years that they've been doing this, which is a slightly faster growth rate than we got with the F company. But we connected already over that, the fact that they're very similar and they have a similar worldview. And they told us about why they want to acquire us, and they threw a number out there. It was an okay number. It wasn't the highest number that we've heard from the other potential buyers. But then they told us, look, guys, your vision is to build the best B2B agency in the Nordics. We said, yeah. They said, well, that's cute. And maybe one day you'll be able to do it. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll probably get there, given your growth trajectory. But how about the best at B2B in the world? If we come in, we give you the processes, we give you the budgets, we give you the knowledge, we give you the legal team and the finance team and the HR, and you never have to think about any of that stuff. And you just focus on building up your B2B marketing competence and bringing it out there, speaking at more events, producing more content, being more visible. Then think of the things that we could accomplish together. And that was the pivotal moment for us. That's when we realized that we probably found our team. We found this match. And we realized that finally someone is offering us superpowers as opposed to just money. Because money is just money. You can always make more. But these superpowers were something that no one had ever offered us before. And it wasn't an easy decision to make in the end because it's still your baby. But it was much easier than with anyone else. And it's now been just over a year as part of Precis. In fact, the F Company brand is now going away.
You guys are having a funeral, right?
We're having a funeral for the F Company, and it's going to be on the 4th of the 4th at 4 p.m. So everything starts with F. But we've now been a part of Precis for over a year, and while it doesn't come without its challenges, of course, being integrated into a much larger company. We now have 600 people. We have offices in 10 countries, a much wider service offering. It's been a fantastic decision for myself and my business partner, but it's also been great for our people because when you're a company of 25 people, the career progression opportunities hit a ceiling pretty quickly. Once you have the most senior role there is, then what's next, right? You can be paid a little bit more next year, but where do you go from there? And now all of a sudden you have this massive career map where you can be anything you want to be. You can move to different countries if you want to. You can go to Denmark or California or Sweden if you really want to. You can work on e-commerce if that's your cup of tea. And I think I feel good and content with that decision. I still remain an entrepreneur at heart, and it was important for me that I get to come in as a partner. I'm a shareholder at Precis, so I do feel ownership in the business. And now we're continuing the same thing with much bigger ambition and with way more resources.
You stayed on as the CEO.
I stayed on as the CEO of Precis Finland, and I'm a partner as well, which was very important to me. I can't work without owning a part of the business.
Yeah, it's hard to let go of that feature.
It's hard to let go of that because then your why doesn't really connect, you know? And my why is building stuff. You know, I want to build things. And if I'm building stuff for someone else and I get absolutely nothing out of it, then it's hard for me to motivate myself to do it.
You're what I call a recovering self-development addict. What were you like and what triggered the change?
Look, as a kid, as a teenager, when everyone else was reading Harry Potter, I was reading self-development books, which is kind of sad when you think about it, but it also maybe in some ways helped me get to where I want to be. I was consuming hundreds of like books and videos and motivational tapes or whatever existed back in the day about how to manage your time better, how to build your career, how to be more efficient and more productive and squeeze more out of your 24 hours than everyone else. And that's what drove me throughout my 20s, I think, and late teens. And I'm sure that in many ways it has helped me, but at some point I realized that it's not making me happy. I realized that this inner voice that every entrepreneur has, the inner voice that tells you to get off your ass and build something, I have built up that inner voice to be a bit of a monster, up to a point where I couldn't take a day off. Like, I'm not even talking about a day off. Jesus Christ. Like, I couldn't sit on the sofa and read a book for an hour because my inner voice would tell me that I need to get off my ass and find a better way to use this time. I could be building a landing page for a new product. I could be testing some new idea. I could be launching this startup that I've thought about for the last 3 years and never got around to because I'm a lazy ass, you know? And calming down that inner voice was something that I think was pivotal for me in many ways. It took a lot of self-reflection. It took a lot of therapy, years of therapy, actually. Talking about the fact that I simply can't take it easy and I can't be kind to myself. I can't stop and appreciate what I've achieved so far. And there's always something that I'm chasing. And it took realizing that achieving those goals and those targets doesn't actually make you happy, you know? When I was 27, I wrote down that in the next couple of years, I want to build a company and then sell it and make money and build a brand for myself. And then I did all of those things. And then I realized that I'm still not happy. And I didn't get that satisfaction that I thought I would. And then I realized that perhaps something needs to change. So a recovering self-development addict is something no one has called me before, but I think it's very accurate.
I'm myself one, so.
Yeah. And it took me the better part of my early 30s to start reevaluating that, to learn to go on walks or runs or gym sessions without a business book in my headphones, you know, to learn to just chill sometimes and have a quiet weekend at the cottage, swimming in the lake and going to the sauna without thinking about work or without having to have my laptop with me. I learned to delete my social media, my Slack, and my email when I go on holidays, because then I realize that I can't recover when I do it. And look, I'm still this guy. I'm still the guy with the drive and the inner voice, and that's who makes me me. And it's something that I never want to lose. I'm always going to be the guy who builds stuff. But now I'm the person who has a little bit more balance and who's able to sometimes shut that voice off for a little bit, just enough to recover. And I think it's going to be a lifelong process for me, just because that inner voice is so exceptionally strong. Maybe because of where I come from, when I was, you know, hungry as a kid and telling myself that when I grow up, I'll work harder and my family and my future children will never have to face this same thing. That is still there. And it's always going to be there. But I've learned to manage it a little bit better.
I think the crazy part about that is it's not necessarily even an external pressure. It's something we create for ourselves, and we are our biggest demons.
Exactly.
And it's a lifelong process.
It's insane. Like what you said is so true. It's not external at all.
Yeah.
And my friends and, you know, my family, they ask me sometimes when I'm having these difficult conversations with myself in difficult moments, they ask me like, who are you doing this for? Like, what do you need to do? Do you need
Who are you
more
proving yourself
money?
to?
No, I don't. It's like, are you trying to prove yourself to someone? No, not at all. So why are you doing it? And you can't explain to them that it comes from within. It doesn't come from the outside. It's a blessing and a curse. Like the people who have this inner voice are the ones who end up building amazing things. And
Or they crash and burn.
Or they crash and burn, they get up and then they end up being amazing things, building amazing things after that. And I want to be building things my entire life because that's what makes me happy and that's what makes me who I am. But I just you need to learn to be a little bit more at peace with that inner voice and calm that like inner child and let him know that it's okay to chill sometimes and you need that.
Yeah, 100%. What is a question you think more entrepreneurs should ask themselves?
Why am I doing this? That's the question that every entrepreneur should ask themselves. And maybe it was Simon Sinek, of course, who made it popular with those viral videos on what is your why and whatever. But at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is really freaking hard. Sleepless nights, long days, tons of stress. The first couple of years of the F company, I was having my laptop open on the Christmas table. And because there were Christmas campaigns that had to go out for our clients. And I couldn't not do it. Like, that's what you have to do. And then obviously my friends and family were like, what are you doing? And I had to explain to them that this is what you have to do. And you will have tons of ups and downs. You will have a lot of really difficult, dark moments when you realize that no one actually understands what you do. You have to be an entrepreneur to understand how difficult it is to be one. And if you don't know what your why is, if you can't answer to yourself why you're doing the thing you're doing, why are you going through all of this, then you won't be able to last for very long. During one of those downs, you simply won't be able to get back up anymore. And I think I've always had that strong why. I think it comes from my childhood. You know, my why is because I grew up hungry. And I don't want for my children or my family to go hungry. And if you think about it logically, of course, they never will. But that feeling is still there. And that's my why. So think about why you're doing it. And I think many entrepreneurs, when they're really honest with themselves, they will realize that their why is not strong enough. Mm. And maybe they want to be entrepreneurs because it's trendy and it's this like sexy life that you see on Instagram when people drive fancy cars and fly business class or whatever. But that alone, I don't think is strong enough. And then it's okay to admit to yourself that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe there is a better, more balanced life out there for me. And maybe I would be much happier being an employee, having all the benefits and the 9 to 5 and the paid time off, you know?
I love that. Thank you so much, David. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I think we could go on forever.
We could go on. Thank you for this. I really appreciate you having me. And I hope if there are entrepreneurs out there watching me, I hope that this encourages them to keep doing this, because at the end of the day, I personally think that being a business owner and building something from nothing is the best thing you can do in life. It's so fun and it contributes to the society, to the community on so many different levels. You're creating jobs, you're paying taxes, you're building your own future, you're being creative. It's amazing. It's the best life that I could have chosen for myself, despite all the difficult things. And I'm happy and excited to be where I am today, and I can't wait for what's coming.
Like you said in the beginning, if it's something you're thinking about, just do it. Give it a go.
Exactly. I mean, there's a famous sports brand, and they have
they were onto something.
Very famous slogan. I'm just saying, I think they're onto something. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelly.